The Sherlock Holmes Advent Calendar. An Odyssey Through Jerusalem by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Nora Godwin. Narrated by Peter Silverleaf. 10. The Trail of Destruction. On our first morning in Jerusalem, we were woken up quite early by our host. My head was buzzing a little due to the bottle of raki we shared the previous evening. Holmes, meanwhile, was in a quite controlled state, not letting anybody see the aftermath of last night on his face, and Sulla was his vivid old self, full of beans. He seemed to benefit from being familiar with Turkish liquor for years. After having breakfast with Mirjam and the children, where I had nothing more than 2 cups of strong coffee, we wanted to visit the previous crime scenes. Holmes was convinced that these would provide the first clues. We had to make our way through the city on foot, the small alleys in the city not allowing for any type of cart anyhow. The streets were filled to brim with people, locals as well as pilgrims. I would amount them to about 40,000 people crowded into a quite small space. To me personally, however, the walks offered the welcome opportunity to take a closer look at the old quarters, which in turn fulfilled certain touristic, historical, and religious interests. I mean, we were walking on sacred ground after all. This fact was hard for me to comprehensively take in. In all corners and ends of the city there were places that referred to events of the New Testament, and most of them had been marked with Christian churches or at least chapels. Similar projects were in planning or under construction. Because of that, the various religious communities and associated European states indirectly also had their branch offices in Jerusalem. The Greek Patriarchate in several places. The German Evangelical Church of the Redeemer had only recently been built. St. Anne's Church functioned as a French consulate general since it had been handed over to Napoleon III by the Sultan as a sign of gratitude for his support in the Crimean War, and the Church of England had maintained an Anglican missionary society for almost 50 years not far from the Jaffa Gate with the Christ Church. Since the Church of the Holy Sepulchre had a special interconfessional status, papal power was mostly represented indirectly with the Austrian Hospice, and the Church of the Holy Family on the premises was unofficially regarded as the centre of Catholicism in Jerusalem. Holmes and Sulla had little left for such considerations, because they were already fully focused on the investigation. When we reached our first station, the local branch of the Ottoman Palestinian Sanjak administration, whose headquarters were located in Damascus, we quickly grasped how tense the overall situation really was. Some Turkish soldiers had been ordered to clean the facade of the building, which had been smeared with the anti-Ottoman paroles right afterwards. They obviously had to make a big effort to remove parole, "Ottomans go home." In the end, some of it had to be painted over. A crowd had formed around them, not only watching them at work, but also shouting unfriendly words at them. Salah translated for us. The workers were mostly laughed at, and the one or other tomato or egg flew in the direction of the building. While the overall mood was not about to escalate violently, the people of Jerusalem, Arabs and Jews alike, were pretty open about their support for the activities of the alleged terrorists. They seemed to quite enjoy the writings on the walls and viewed the countermeasures of the Ottomans as amusement. Holmes took Sulla aside and hinted at one of the still legible letterings on the building. "My knowledge of Arabic is low, but if I am not mistaken, then this sentence contains a grammatical error. Can you confirm?" The Palestinian squinted his eyes and then replied, "You are right. They did not use the correct form of the imperative there. I didn't even know you knew our language." "I wouldn't say that either," Holmes explained, "but the grammar of complex languages is like mathematics. In this way I have found a certain basic system for my own studies. But do tell, what does that mean?" Sulla shrugged. "Nothing," he replied, "except that our schools need to be improved." Next, we went to the destroyed police station. It, well, to be precise, its debris, was located at the Lion's Gate just north of the Temple Mount. No one was injured in the bomb attack, as the small building was unoccupied at the time in question. The eastern access to the Muslim quarter, nevertheless, had to be closed for a few days. Holmes trudged around in the ruins and turned over one or other stone. As far as I could tell, there was nothing left to see here, but my friend kept nodding as if he had found a new clue. After that, Holmes wanted to inspect the weapons depot, which had also mostly crumbled to dust. It was also located in the vicinity of the Damascus Gate, between the Muslim and Christian quarters. The arsenal was located outside the walls, which had prevented a disaster, even though there was probably enough ammunition stored in it which may have led to some subsequent explosions. On the other hand, all the flawed logic of the Ottoman administration was also evident in this place. While the depot had apparently not been sufficiently guarded before the attack, 10 Turkish soldiers now secured the ruins. Which was, in my opinion, completely in vain now. Everything that could still be saved in terms of material had already been removed. The symbolism showed a certain helplessness of the regime. Now that we were already on the edge of the old town anyway, we went back to the train station where we had arrived the night before. On the side of the platforms, still accessible by passengers, we found the freight wagon that had been set on fire by the attackers. It was burned down to the skillet, the steel axles and wheels. "Our perpetrators are doing a great job," Holmes noted. "They act efficiently, quickly, and disappear as quickly as they appear. But they still make mistakes." Salah's face showed skeptical features. "Are you still hung up on the poor grammar?" "Not at all," Holmes explained. "I would like to draw your attention to the following things. Obviously, we are not dealing with individual perpetrators, but also not with a small group. There must be a secret network with connections in all kinds of directions. It was known that this wagon included a shipment of weapons. They knew which places were unoccupied or sparsely guarded. No amateurs are at work here. Last thing is that there are large quantities of explosives needed for the attacks, especially when it is assumed that more will follow. Dynamite cannot simply be bought at the bazaar. It needs a professional supplier more than just a small gun pusher." "You seem to be breeding out a conspiracy here," I interjected. Holmes shook his head. "I simply analyze the facts and draw logical conclusions." "But what about the mistakes you mentioned?" asked Salah. "I don't see any mistakes." "I will present my further insights to you in a moment," Holmes replied. "But not here at the station. Surely you have some kind of office in the city, don't you?" After our Palestinian colleague had confirmed the assumption, we went back to the Muslim quarter, where Salah was working his actual job, practically not far from his own house. However, when we reached the small office on the ground floor, we made an amazing discovery. The door was barricaded with wooden boards, which were mounted with nails. "Such impudence!" said Salah, outraged. Holmes inspected the barricade and attested, "Undoubtedly the work of a gifted carpenter. Here, however, a sheet of paper is also attached. You are not in arrears with your rent payments, are you?" I had to laugh for a moment, but I got a critical look from our local friend. "That's not funny, Dr. Watson." He admonished me and tore the note from the door to read. The text on it was written in Arabic. We received a summary. "These were the terrorists. I am accused of being a collaborator and asked to stop all support for the Ottoman regime. Then threats follow. That's incredible." "Well, you said after all," Holmes added, "that as an investigator you can quickly become a target yourself." While removing the boards with great effort since we lacked tools, onlookers gathered and began to laugh and chant unfriendly words. Here, too, the actions of the underground group were apparently welcomed. Finally, we managed to uncover the door. We walked in, and the people in front of the office dispersed again. "That's not good at all," Salah commented on the situation. "Everything is pointing towards an escalation, even outright unrest. We must find clues and bring results. So, Mr. Holmes, what did you want to tell?" We took a seat at the simple wooden table in Salah's workspace, and Holmes took a deep breath. And then he pulled a stick of dynamite out of his coat pocket and put it right in front of our noses. "For heaven's sakes, what's the point of that?" shouted the Palestinian investigator. "Do you want to blow up my office? I thought we were on the same side." "Don't worry, you are in no danger," Holmes assured. "What you see here in front of you is the first mistake of the assassins, and a proof." "A proof?" I repeated. "What for?" Holmes raised his right index finger admonishingly and said, "One after another, my dear Watson. I found this pole in the rubble of the destroyed police station and picked it up." "At the police station?" I asked. "When were you going to let us in on that?" "I'm doing it right now," Holmes replied. "Obviously, this stick of dynamite was dropped by the terrorists when they blew up the station. They didn't notice it and left it. But it also does not speak for the Ottoman investigative work that I first had to come to find it at the scene of the crime. But that doesn't matter. Much more important is that there is an inscription on the stick." Salah picked up our potential piece of evidence and tried to decipher the small letters. "These are Cyrillic signs," he noted. "Probably Russian. Unfortunately, I do not speak this language. What does it say?" "Not much," Holmes replied. "The words simply mean made in Russia. But for us, this should be a good enough hint." I was still confused about that, and just had to ask, to what extent should this help us? "Well, the trail obviously leads to St. Petersburg," Holmes said, satisfied. "I'm certainly not going there, Holmes," I replied immediately. My good-natured friend smiled. "That won't be necessary either." "But what do we do now?" I added. "Should we make a request to the government of the Tsar or the metropolitans of Moscow?" "I might have a better idea," Salah interfered again. "The relationship between Russia and the Ottoman Empire is shattered. That means, while there is no official envoy to turn to here, our intelligence service knows where to find the spies of the Okrana's foreign division." "Excuse me?" I objected, irritated. "You know Russian spies in Jerusalem, but choose not to uncover them. Shouldn't they be arrested or at least expelled?" "That's not how we work," Salah replied. "That would be unwise. It's a give and take. You have to stay in touch. We prefer to know what is going on and who is acting instead of having to deal with new, unknown, and thus unpredictable agents again and again." "And where do we find your Russian spies?" I asked. "Quite simply," Salah claimed. "Among their friends and allies among the Armenians, of course."